why we invited her is that she looks after all the hospitality at the Nedbank Golf Challenge on an annual basis as of 2012. And that is the goal that we're looking for today, because we watch the golf on television, and some of you might have attended it in the past, and everything seems so flawless. And when they interview the golfers and all the other celebrities, everybody just can't speak highly enough of how that operation runs like a well-oiled machine. And behind the scenes is a lady called Jeanne Visagie, who makes everything work. So Jeanne, on that note, heartily welcome, and we really look forward to having you here today. So just on a point of order, please remember, for bandwidth's sake, maybe just keep all the videos down and keep your microphones muted. Jeanne will give you an indication whether when and how she would like to engage with you, participate, and don't make her feel like she's just talking to a computer screen on the other side. Show life. Thank you. On all yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deon. So first and foremost, thank you for inviting me and for hosting me. I think that what I need to do today before I get into any formalities is I've shared my screen with you with the presentation that I've drafted. Can I maybe just get a thumbs up from the participants, whether you can see it, whether it's on your side and that you're seeing the title screen called Nedbank Golf Challenge?
John, no, we can't see it.
Okay, give us a second. We're just going to share screen with you.
Except if that is me. If it doesn't work, John, I'm just going to make you the main host.
Perfect, Prof. Pete. Just give us a second. We'll try and reconnect it.
Okay.
Can you see how you have to be agile in a project?
And that there's always a plan.
Always a plan.
Pete, can you maybe just give an indication, is Jeanne the host now?
Deon, Jeanne is a co-host. So she should have all the rights of the host. But if there's any issue, I'm going to make her the main host, yeah.
Guys, give us 1 second.
There we go, there we go, there we go. Perfect, perfect.
You got it.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, there we go. So
yes.
should we try again? Does everybody have a presentation with an opening slide called Nedbank Golf Challenge in front of you? And can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, it's there. It's there. It's there. Perfect.
Excellent. Okay, guys. So as I was saying, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored and privileged to be a part of this session. And as I said to Deon when we chatted earlier, the idea for me is not to sit here and talk ad nauseum for the next hour. The idea is for it to be informal, be a coffee chat. Yes, I've done a couple of slides to orientate you and as a point of reference with some visuals that we'll obviously refer to. But guys, please, at any stage as we're going through the presentation, if there is anything you'd like to know or know more about, please just let me know, whether that's by means of interrupting me. I've got absolutely no issue with that as we go along, and please pose your questions. It's a monster of an event, and it's a monster of a project. So I'm hoping that with the information I give you and the overview and some inner learnings of what we've gone through over the last few years, it will give you a very good idea with regards to what it takes to pull off this little putt-putt tournament, as I call it. So first and foremost, I've played quite a bit with regards to in theory and then in practice. And the first thing I want to do as an introduction is Einstein and Frankie Visagie. Who are they and why am I introducing them to you? So Einstein and Frankie Visagie are my two Dachshunds, my two Vorsies. In theory, they're very well behaved, and I've told them I've got a presentation for the next hour. We don't want to hear boo or baa out of them. In practice, we know that's not going to happen. I know you've already heard them, and the chances are they may even try and jump up. So if you see a little dapple or you see a little chocolate sausage appear in the screen, bear with me. That's who they are. Okay, Jeanne Visagie, who am I? So thank you to Dion, obviously, for the precursor. Guys, I'm a Bloem girl, born and bred. I'm an English-speaking Free Stater, which I know is an exception. I had my passport. I got out of the Free State about 20-odd years ago. My family are still there. We're very disappointed with the fact that I couldn't be in Bloemfontein and do this up close and personal. Very odd for me to sit here and talk to a forum of people that I can't see. I normally love being in front of crowds of people. I love talking to people. I love being able to interact and engage. But I am a Free Stater, born and bred. Who else am I? I am an individual who has braces. I got braces about a year ago. So if I'm talking funny, it's not because I'm drinking at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. It's not because I lisp due to the 2 glasses of sherry that I've had to warm us up. I lisp because I have braces, not my choice. So bear with me again if you hear that I sound a bit funny through today's talk, that's why. Hospitality in my blood. I decided in Bloemfontein in standard 7, and there I'm disclosing my age because I don't refer to grades, that I wanted to serve, and I wanted to be in an industry that serves. So from the ripe age of 14, I've been working in restaurants, Stringfellows, for those of you who remember it. After that, I moved into Beef Baron, worked with incredible people with regards to passion and drive, and was inspired through them. I paid for my own studies. I paid for my way through my hospitality management diploma in Bloemfontein. I met my husband at the hotel school, and 24 years later, we're still together. That's the arm you might see every now and again that comes into the screen and helps me out with his MacBook. I'm a Windows girl. I'm not Mac, but Mac's better for the presentation. So that's who I am. So a bit of background post Bloemfontein. Got my hotel management diploma. Was fortunate to be top of my class, and I could choose where I wanted to do my practical. I chose Sun City by virtue of the fact that 20-odd years ago, 23-odd years ago, in fact, it was the Mecca of South Africa. It was the Mecca of hospitality. Multi-hotel, multi-functional property with regards to the experiences I knew in the sense of what I wanted to achieve and the experience I wanted to gain. There was not better in South Africa at the time. Did my management practical there, was very fortunate to be selected out of about 400 people to go onto an accelerated management program, which I did for 18 months, resort liaison officer, and I did everything. I went into every single department, started at the bottom, was fortunate to work my way up with and through the management's guidance into a strategic level during that time with regards to approach and methodologies. I worked in maintenance, I worked at the fire station, I have wrapped fire hoses, I have been in boiler rooms, I have cleaned rooms, I have sat within yield management forums throughout those 18 months. I got a very good handle for what hospitality and what a resort is about. During that time, I was fortunate enough to get involved with the Nedbank Golf Challenge, and now we're talking 1998 for the first year. I was a gopher, I was an appy, I worked for the food and beverage manager at the time. The footprint with regards to the setup at that time was not even 30% of what it is now, and we did everything. We started at 6 o'clock in the morning. We would go out on course, we would meet with suppliers, we would basically be run around. Anything that needed to be done, we were there and we did. We did not have email. In 1998, Sun City did not have email. So for the first 2 hours of every day, my friend and I would get to the office. We would prepare our faxes and our memos. We had a desktop computer, a telephone. I remember in that time, we would bring in hotel school students from Pretoria, and Donald Brain was their lecturer. And the one day we give him a call, we firm up on the arrangements with regards to the students when they're coming. And he says, but don't worry, just pop me an email. He says, take down my email address. So of course we take his email address down. We put the phone down after the conversation. My friend and I look at each other and it's like, wow, he's got email. So it's incredible how things have progressed. Needless to say, Sun City got email the next year, and the efficiencies with regards to how we would actually communicate with individuals, push button, send to 12 people was amazing. Our days didn't get shorter though, so we just became more efficient. After my management program, I got approached by the resort, went into operations. I have done food, beverage, banqueting. As I say, I've worked full spectrum across the resort. About 2 years into that tenure, I was approached by the CFO of the company, Graham Wood, who's currently the COO of Hospitality for Sun International. He is a qualified CA. And his question to me was, Jeanne, would you like to leave operations and would you like to come into finance? And I looked at him, and I think I may even have rolled my eyes unintentionally and said, are you mad? Because finance and operations are chalk and cheese. And the reason why I've put that in theory and then in practice is Graham's chat to me was quite simply put, he had interacted with me, he'd spent a bit of time with me, he'd understood my makeup and my profile, how I think. He'd seen me in operations, he liked what he saw, and what he wanted to do was principally guinea pig me. He literally said, he says, Jeanne, in theory, you get accountants, the bean counters, and in practice, you get operations. And the two don't talk to each other. We're currently running as independent silos. What happens in theory is not applicable in practice, and I need for the bean counters and the operators to start talking the same language. And he wanted me to be that guinea pig. And I said to him, well, what would it entail? And he says, you've got a very strong operational background, so you understand the mechanics of ops, but I need for you to be able to take that and apply those principles within finance. And I said, well, finance in what sense? And he says to me, well, we've recently established a division called Project Accounts, headed up by another CA, Janita Creel at the time, or JK as she was known on the resort. And he said to me, under her guidance and leadership, we'd like for you to start there. And the principles behind Project Accounts at the time at Sun City, and now we're talking early 2000s, was quite simply put for it to be the division commercially that would determine whether any piece of business or any event or any proposal related to the resort was feasible. So it had to do with feasibilities, it had to do with due diligence, it had to do with understanding operations. Because again, in as much as you would do your principles, you do your P&Ls, you do your data sheet that would go with it, unless it was feasibly practical within an operation, could it or would it work? And that was the start of it. I said to Graham, I would be keen. I took a leap of faith out of operations into finance. I did my second qualification through them part-time. I have newfound respect for individuals that study and work at the same time. It was tough. It was exceptionally tough. It was an international qualification, and I can now safely say I know what the difference is between a debit and a credit, which has obviously stood us in good stead as we've gone along our journey within our career paths. And it was three years spent most probably the most incredible time from a platform perspective in the sense of the learnings, the individuals I was exposed to and what I could do. During that time, I continued doing the Nedbank Golf Challenge, obviously in different portfolios and different capacities. From there, I was then approached by the GM of events to say, Jeanne, you've got events in your blood and you haven't left it. You do the Golf Challenge. Would you be interested to come back into events for the resort? And I considered it. I thought that my time at Project Accounts was very well spent and I'd learned a lot, but principally, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financier. I am an operator. My blood, my time, my effort, my passion sits with people and frontline and eventing. So I made the move. I headed up the international events division for the resort for a couple of years. And give me a second, I just want to have a look and see. Sorry, there was just a notification. I think we've just had some attendees join us. I headed up that portfolio for 2 years at the resort, continuing doing the golf. All the international business and trade that would come through to the resort, the wedding portfolio, the site inspection portfolio. And by the time we left Sun City, because Rian and I left at the time together to head across to a development in the Limpopo, I had been there close on 7 years. And 7 years worth of learning school within a hospitality maker could not have taught me more. I think from a founding perspective, it was incredible. From there, we moved across into a smaller group, golf course development. There were 13 lodges within the portfolio, and I moved across as a group operations manager for 2.5 years. We were involved in that, grew the portfolio to 18 lodges. And in early 2008, we decided it was time for us to break away and do our own thing. We have a very good platform. We have great contacts. We have great experience. And in 2008, we started our company, Cello. That's the company that we are currently involved in with. Founded it, established it, we've grown it. We've subsequently expanded it into a separate company, Foodio, which is the catering and the restaurant leg. We've got a restaurant in Joburg, which obviously is currently not open. We do corporate catering, we do canteen catering, events is a part of our portfolio, hospitality training skills is a part of our portfolio. We're an accredited training provider. So from a full spectrum perspective, I just wanted to give you a bit of background with regards to where I've come from, what I've done, and invariably why Nedbank is still in my blood. So yes, Dion was quite right with regards to in 2012, I was approached by Sun International again to go back and get involved in the Nedbank Golf Challenge. The last year I had done it, which had been 2005, I was both in charge of the finance side due to my financial background and project accounts, as well as the operational side. And there's a definite link between the two with regards to what talks in the finance space has to happen operationally and vice versa, because it doesn't help we run them independently and each one operates independently, but they don't knit or they don't merge. So what had happened over the 8 odd years I'd been away is they had split the portfolio, they'd put finance within the finance domain, put operations into the operational domain, and in essence the two ran, and they ran as independent silos. When I was asked to go back in 2012, the first thing I did was an analysis with regards to do the two still talk to each other. And in as much as the event was still executed, in as much was still delivered and delivered very well, there were definite gaps in the system and inefficiencies. And it is things as silly and as small as spreadsheets that were done with formula links that didn't pull through, supply chain management, procurement, cost management, cross-pollination with regards to if there are 4 departments ordering in radios, why does each one bring in a repeater? So that started operating individually. So the first very big part of my project when I came back was to pull it all together again and to make sure that the two ran parallel and that they spoke to each other. And in a matter of 3 months, purely by doing that, I'd identified almost 3.5 million rands worth of efficiencies. And that's 3.5 million rand that's being spent on something that didn't need to be spent and that is unnecessary without jeopardizing the quality. So we pulled it together. So moving into Nedbank Golf Challenge, why we here. The purpose for me today is to take you through the mechanics of the event. I'm going to go into the more recent events with a lot of reference to last year. I'm going to take you and try and paint a picture with regards to the event, the size, the scope, the setup, the mechanics, the detail, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is gloves off, and the very nice thing is that I'm going to give you a couple of live scenarios with regards to what we've gone through. We all know, in theory, you can plan, and in practice, when you execute, in an ideal world, it would all be the same, but it's not. So realistically, we have a hotel school as well that we run up at Emperor's Palace, and we've put over 1,600 skills programs through that school over the last 3 years. And one of the biggest things we always say to our students is, it's not about dropping the ball. It's about what do you do once you've dropped the ball. Invariably, that's going to happen. So guys, moving on to event overview, I just want to double check, is everyone still okay? That's pretty much who I am, what I've done, and now we're going to go into the mechanics. Super. I see a couple of thumbs up and a clap of hands. Thank you, everybody. Right, moving into the event overview. So the Nedbank Golf Challenge is definitely one of the highlights of our South African sporting calendar. I think the most important thing about the golf is we reference Africa's major, and it is. It's the biggest sporting event on our calendar. If you haven't been there, please make a plan to get there. Last year was its 39th year, and this year is its 40th edition, which is unbelievable. I think that there are still individuals that refer to it as the $1 million as opposed to the Nedbank Golf Challenge. I do. That won't leave my vocab. But principally, 40 years down the line, it's an event that South Africa holds close to their hearts. We host between 64 to 72 players with a purse of 7.5 million rand. That is what our prize pot was last year. And for those of you that may not know, is in 2016, we changed the structure slightly where we became part of the European tour. And as such, we are now part of the Rolex series, with our positioning in the series being that we are the penultimate event to the race to Dubai, which means we are the semi-final to the final as a part of that series. To paint the picture with regards to timelines and how do we do our planning. So the event is traditionally in November of every year. We very recently made an announcement to say that we're moving it back into first weekend of December due to COVID. That was largely governed by the fact that the Masters took our dates that would have been in November, the buggers, but it actually counts in our favor. It gives us about 3 extra weeks with regards to planning for this year that we need. So I'm referencing our traditional grid or process of a November event, but in essence, what we're doing is everything we just move forward for this year. So the main pillars that we're going to look at, and I'm not going to refer to the subcategories, marketing, PR, etc. It's mainly just with regards to financials, our sponsors, operations, suppliers. To sum it up, we do an event that we do not stop planning. Our build starts beginning of July, traditionally with regards to scaffolding and grandstand. Our marquees would principally start going up end of August, beginning of September. For an event that we host for 1 week, for 7 days, in 3 weeks, we need our heads read. I think that being in hospitality takes a little bit of crazy. Working on an event of this nature proves that. We have an incredible team who's obviously committed to the process. And in as much as I consult to Sun International, I become Sun International when I do the golf. So you can see, just with regards to our general timelines, as the one event finishes, we kick into and immediately start off with the planning for the next. So we would have our event in November. We would do our breakdown, and what's critical with regards to the breakdown is that in as much as we may build for 4 or 5 months, we've got to get the resort and obviously all the space we work within holiday ready for December. Give me a second. I see there's just a notification that's come through. If there is anyone that's wanting to ask or say anything, in the event that I'm missing any communication, if you're sending messages, please feel free just to put your video on, unmute, and stop me.
John, it's just when people want to come in, there's a couple of our delegates that's got Wi-Fi problems, so they get thrown off. When you see that, I'll just let them in. So it's just you getting it because you're the co-host.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thank you, Prof. I thought someone was sticking up a hand that I couldn't see, and they're thinking, this woman, all she does is talk. Perfect. No problem. Then I'll keep going. So yes, from a milestone perspective, what we would then do is we would need to make sure we get the space we work with resort ready for December, their December season, their leisure trade. And in essence, the guests that are on the resort over that time don't want ripped up grass, don't want dead grass, don't want stock lying around all over the show, don't want a pool that is substandard with regards to build or a crack in it due to the fact that the event was there a month ago. They're not worried about that. They are paying prime rate to be at a resort that operates as a resort. So we've got a very tight timeline to break it down. January, what we would do is we would do a debrief with our sponsors. So we would get all of our sponsors together into one communal or collective forum. We would debrief from our perspective in the sense of our numbers, our take-up, our learnings, anything with regards to sponsorship or sponsorship strategies that might change for the next year. Obviously get their feedback. That for us is one of the most critical points, is to engage with our sponsors and say, we've put on a world-class event. We know there may have been concerns or issues. We are not perfect. We will not always get it right. We strive to, but we may not. Talk to us. Let us know what can we do to improve. Whether that's food concepts, beverage concepts, delivery, service, access, timing, the field, play, functions that we do. That is our forum of debriefing and saying, think tank it, where are we and what can we do with your feedback, and incorporate that into our planning for the next event. Immediately after that, we would take that collective feedback and we would do a strat session with our stakeholders, so with Sun International, Nedbank, the European Tour, and we would then plot out our strategy for the next event. Whilst doing that, we run a parallel with our financials. So we're closing off the 1 year. We would obviously need to close or finalize and have that audited before we could move into opening up in budgets for the next year. If there are any changes to a contractual period or a contract for the sponsor, we would do it in that time, sort of February, March, April. And what's guiding us with regards to that process or the approach would be the contract period or the tenure with Nedbank. So the contract was signed for 2019, 20 and 21. Those are the 3 years of the contract period. We would traditionally try to line up the rest of our sponsorship contracts or term with that period. There may have been ad hoc contracts, or there may be sponsors that come on board. So that's the time frame we would use to tidy that up. From a budget perspective, and I think important here maybe just to touch on the budget and our process and how it works, is pre-2016, Sun International is the promoter, owner and host of the event. In 2016, when it became part of the European Tour series, Sun International still own the event. They are still the promoter, but what they've done is they've ceded those rights to the European Tour. What that did is it changed the format substantially. It used to be a December event. It moved into November. It used to be a far smaller field. It changed over the years. Anything from 12 initially when it was by invite only, up to 20 with the seniors, up to 30 the 1 year. But 30 odd players was kind of the max that we would work with. With the European Tour, it went up to 72 players in the first year, but it varies between 64 to 72 subject to the invites and obviously the take-up with regards to play and qualifiers. With that move, and most probably the most important change, is that with European Tour now having the rights that have been ceded, they also took over the budget, which means that they would underwrite the budget both for upside and downside, which for Sun International, based on a dollar-based prize fund, was a huge draw, subject to obviously exchange and where you are. And over the last 4 years, in principle, any risk associated with that budget would be the European tours. It also split out the budget where there would be a local budget with regards to, in essence, our operating budget to execute local costs. And then there would be an international budget with European tours sitting where they are, and obviously Forex, pounds, dollars, etc. for them without having to exchange was far more feasible. So that's from a budget perspective, the big change. If there were an intern, as we were trying to align our sponsorship contracts with the contracted period for Nedbank and Sun International, for the major contracts, or from a supply chain perspective, we would try and align it to that period as well. And as you would all know, if you could sign up a 3-year supply for a 3-year term, you can get commitments with regards to pricing, quality, innovation. They have the guarantee with regards to investment on their side. We have the guarantee with regards to continuity and service. You would always have an exit clause. You would always keep that written into the contract as a backdoor. But in essence, that would help us from a planning perspective. So we went through all of that last year. There are still a few ad hoc contracts, though, that we would work on and deal with on a year-to-year basis. And what also tends to throw a bit of a spanner in the works is the local procurement requirements and the committed spend with regards to not only local procurement within the Northwest, but in essence, doorstep or community-based procurement, which from a business perspective, we've developed a strategy to obviously align ourselves with them and to grow them, which we've done in partnership with a lot of the suppliers that have been part of the process of the Gulf for the last 10 or 15 years. Once we've done all of that, and that is obviously the build-up and the planning, we then get into the operational stage. So as I said, one of the first things for us is we start with a grandstand build. We start that beginning of July. We bring in over 1,400 tons of scaffolding that needs to go up, which is a combination of TV tires, camera tires, grandstand seating, VIP seating, hospitality decks, but 1,400 tons is no mean feat. From there, high level, we would in essence go with our marquee and our infrastructure, which is the next biggest build, and that would start at end of August, beginning of September, and that's roughly a 2-month build. And then from there, obviously bump in the products or services around it. From a handover perspective, and that's another key milestone, is we would in essence, and when I refer
John?
to we, yes, Prof. Beat.
Dion here. It's Dion here.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt because you're on a very good role. I was just thinking from a quality assurance perspective and a quality management perspective on our projects. As soon as you venture into a construction-related industry, there's a serious amount of compliance that will probably go with constructing those grandstands and legal aspects that you need to discount. Can you maybe just give us some brief insight into that compliance environment? I'm just thinking of health and safety and maybe an ISO standard, and then I'm not talking food, for instance.
Absolutely. So if we talk about the two biggest build elements, so that's your scaffolding and your marquees. The first thing we would need to do with it being an event is we need to do an application through SAS-RIA for our event approval. And that would contain all the aspects with regards to event approval, everything from the makeup, the players, our health, hygiene, safety, any requirements with regards to compliance or legislation. Everything is governed with regards to what's required. But on the maintenance side, so we don't work according to ISO standards, but we do obviously from a compliance perspective work off our COCs, our COAs, engineer certificates, pre-checks, safety files that have to be done. Every single individual that has to come onto site, so inspected from PPE with regards to the makeup. They have to have their safety officers on site. There's a report back. There are daily checks from Sun City side and safety or environmental department with regards to build and compliance. So it's massive. We do continuous inspections with regards to the build and obviously compliance thereof. If there's anything that is spotted, we put our rectification measures in place. But touch wood, through that process, which is obviously preparation upfront and compliance, but regular management with regards to adapting what happens within our build, we have had an incident-free event with regards to both scaffolding and maintenance for as long as I can remember. There would be small injury on duties and that sort of thing that would happen invariably, but structurally, one of the biggest things for us is obviously getting that approval upfront in advance. So we have 2 Bibles, literally, of technical drawings related to every single structure, every single facility, weight-bearing loads, everything that you could think with regards to the pre-approval to make sure that it's safe, we've got in place. Does that answer your question, Dion? Okay, I think I'm going to move on from there, guys, and if there's anything else we haven't covered. So when it comes to handing over, we would in essence hand over to the resort or the operators 1 week prior to the event, and then they would execute. Okay, so that is a high-level process or timeline. Okay, statistics, guys. I've done quite a bit of talking. What I'd now like is there was a poll at the beginning of the session that was open to you to answer. In the event that you haven't already answered it, please could you? There are 3 questions I'd like for you to answer. The first one, and this is just to put into scale the number of or the quantity of what we deal with to execute an event of this nature. So question 1 is, how many tons of spare ribs do you think gets consumed over the 4 days? So we've had 1 person that's completed it so far that is saying between 6,000 to 8,000 kilograms. Okay, 3 people complete. Keep going, guys, and I'm just going to keep an eye on the poll. So 4 people have completed it. I see we're leaning towards 6,000 to 8,000 kilograms. Okay, it's a pretty evenly weighted response right now. Only 6 people have completed, guys. If you don't mind, please try and get onto that poll so we can complete it. Okay, so we're leaning towards, and what's currently front runner is between 6,000 to 8,000 kilograms pork ribs. So while you're completing that, for those of you that have not been to the Gulf or haven't been involved in any hospitality at the Gulf, I can tell you that there are 2 elements that are synonymous with the Gulf. And if we move that from our offering within hospitality, I can guarantee you we would have a riot on our hands. The one is pork ribs, the NGC, or the $1 million ribs as they get referred to. And the second one is ice creams. So if we were not to have those items on the menu, I can guarantee you we would be in serious trouble. We would jeopardize our sponsorship without a doubt. There we go. So the front runner is definitely still 6,000 to 8,000 kilograms. Pork ribs. Okay, 64% have voted. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move off this and go into the detail just to recap. We can see that the front runner with regards to pork ribs is definitely C. I will give you that feedback very shortly. Okay, at NGC, we're saying 25,000. Just have a look and see. And then, Prof. Pete, what I'm not seeing is question 3. Is that a part of the poll, or is it only the 2 that have been listed?
John, no, it is running. It's running. Most people are saying 45 tons.
45.
45 tons. Most people are saying 45 tons. I'm just going to make it bigger so you can see the whole thing.
Thank you.
Can you see the whole one now, John?
No, not yet. But that's okay. What we'll do is as I move into the next slide, you can maybe just give me a recap as we get to each one with regards to the final number. So guys, let's wrap up. I see we've got 85% have voted. So for those of you that haven't finished, we're going to move on. There we go. And I'm happy to end the poll as it currently stands, and we can take those figures as an overall. Okay, so let's have a look and see. Right, so statistics for 2019. Record high attendance of 76,000 people over the 4 days. That was the record that we hit last year. That was absolutely spectacular. And for those of you who are golfers, what was relatively impressive was the fact that we did not have Rory McIlroy last year. We had him 2 years ago. However, our attendance last year beat that, which is a very good number. So I've mentioned the 14 tons of scaffolding that we bring in and that we build over a 4 to 5 month period. Just to put into context, all the hospitality we do is it's spread all over the golf course. So it's not contained like a number of the international events. What they would do is contain their hospitality in areas or villages. We flip it on its belly. We have a look at the golf course. We have a look at the viewing. We have a look at the intimacy of the hole. We have a look at the sponsor. We've got different sponsorship packages. So you could have a private facility for 50 people on the 16th all to yourself. So we spread that across the golf course. Shade cloth. So we build the grandstands, we build the decks, but we finish it off with the green shade cloth that you can see there in that third picky from the bottom, so the base of the grandstands. Over 13.6 running kilometers of shade cloth. How do we tie it to the grandstands? With cable ties. 395,500 cable ties. Do you know how many cable ties that is? Do you know the impact to the budget that if we don't micromanage our supply chain and the costs of cable ties, which we get from Hellerman, we get from overseas, and unfortunately we also govern with the exchange, a 20 cents increase on a cable tie can sink your budget. Picket fencing, we obviously finish off the areas with picket fencing, 3 running kilometers. These are the interesting stats that most people are after. 38,000 liters of beer and cider. So we would normally not publish that because we obviously endorse responsible drinking. But you can imagine with regards to the amount of beer that gets consumed, that's excluding spirits, that's excluding wines over the 4 days. 55,000 liters of water and cool drink. Thank goodness they watered down, obviously, whatever they're having from a beer perspective. 83 tons of ice. So that was one of the questions. So Prof. Pete, maybe you can just tell me what it was weighted towards, what the opinion was with regards to the number of tons of ice.
No, they thought 45 tons. So again, it was sort of almost double that.
Absolutely. So 83 tons of ice. Everything is satellite. Everything is temporary. Everything is brought in with regards to cooling. So whether that is ice, beverage, service, on course, watering holes. Look, to keep 38,000 liters of beer, wine, and spirits cold, you can imagine it takes some doing. We bring in, of those, Coca-Cola and the SAB fridges that you normally see in restaurants or bars. We bring in 164 odd, and it varies per year, subject to the number of sponsors. To ensure that our refrigeration is on point per area, we bring in 28 reefers, so not reefer, as in a refrigerated container, a 6-meter container, those construction containers that are obviously cooled, 18 refrigerated trailers. The next question, how many tons of pork spare ribs? Prof. Pete, you can let me know what the general feedback was there.
The 50% said 6,000 to 8,000, and 25% said over 9,000.
There we go. So 25% of you were correct. 9 tons of pork spare. Do you know how many little piggies that is that they have to line up outside Sun City to get to 9 tons of pork spare ribs? And then lastly, as we said, between the ribs and the ice creams that are synonymous with the golf, 36,648 ice creams. And that's only hospitality. We're not talking about the general public or the vending on course.
John,
So a couple of impressive statistics, yes.
The one nice thing you can say to people, of course, if Dion and I'm there, it's going to be another 1,000 liters of beer. But with the 76,000 people and only 36,000 liters of beer, or 38,000, so it's only half a liter per person.
Indeed, but what I haven't put on there is the wine stats or the spirits.
No, don't.
I'm the wine drinker, and I didn't want to let the cat out the bag.
No, Pete will make it profitable.
Yeah, for sure.
Indeed. And this is only within the confines of the golf course. This is not resort. This is not traders or any of the facilities in the hotels. It's purely the golf. Okay, guys, I'm going to pick up the pace a bit. I've got a bit of a video I want to just give you a loop of, and then we'll move into the details.
When you do come through to Sun City, it's a mecca.
Every year we try and improve. It's the best destination to possibly have a tournament of this nature. I think it can't get better.
There are 2 projects in particular that are very close to my heart, and it's called yarn bombing. It's taking trees, objects, and turning them into art using crocheting or knitting techniques. So we have wrapped 12 trees in and around the golf course. They are absolutely unbelievable. We found a gent that does tire repurposing. It takes old tires and converts them into the most beautiful hanging birds, so we put the baskets in.
This is a special place and the players love coming back here.
It's well known for its food, its beverage, its hospitality.
But you've got to step back and you've got to admire the beauty and what they've created here.
We've introduced Africa's mini major. So 6 putt-putt holes sponsored by our sponsors for the Nedbank Golf Challenge, and the 4 winners over the 4 days get to play off in the grand finale on the 18th green after the prize giving in front of the net.
Really nice.
Fantastic food and beverage offering activations and the Africa's Mini Major. Food and beverage, our sponsors are loving it.
The 40th anniversary of Sun City and the Gary Player Country Club was the perfect stage for another memorable Nedbank Golf Challenge hosted by Gary Player. Saturday, moving day. They didn't move as much as you would have expected. Tough conditions out there. It ended though with the South Africans near the top of the leaderboard. Zander Lombard hanging on at the top, and 1 shot behind him, Louis Westhuizen, also in the mix going into the final round on Sunday. It went to 1 extra hole on the 18th, and it was Tommy Fleetwood who took it with a par on the first playoff hole. It takes a stroke of genius to win Africa's major, and Tommy Fleetwood certainly produced it.
So a quick synopsis just with regards to the event, which I think is quite nice to see what I've been talking about come into fruition. We obviously drive it year on year to try and go bigger, better, best. And a very important part of my portfolio. So to sum up what I do and what I don't do, it's easier to say what I don't do. I do not get involved in accommodation. I do not get involved with the players or their recruitment directly. I do not get involved with the VIP functions, purely by virtue of the fact that by the time the functions take place in that week, I haven't had an off day for 7 weeks. So for me to sit at a dinner table and try and hold a conversation with someone is very difficult. But what I do is I oversee and manage the entire infrastructure setup. So everything that you're going to see in the photos, the marquee, the scaffolding, plumbing, electrical, security, I'm the link sponsors with regards to their requirements in their hospitality that we customize for every single one. I'm the link between the resort and the operators with regards to the food and beverage concepts execution. So full spectrum with regards to my involvement, you'll see, and as I said, a very important part of what I do is how do we improve? How do we ensure that our stakeholders, both in the sense of European Tour and Nedbank, are satisfied with what we do, what we execute, and how we grow the event so that they believe they get the ROI they need. So just a couple of pickies that I've put in here to give you an idea with regards to the evolution, and this is quite nice to see. I don't know how many of you have been to a Nedbank Golf Challenge, but you can see the 18th grandstand is obviously our finishing hole. We would build and create it to primarily in the beginning accommodate the general public with limited hospitality. But what you will see is year on year, we had an objective to create an amphitheater and to start wrapping the 18th. So if you have a look at 2016, you'll see there's an additional facility that we've brought in on the right-hand side. In 2017 at the bottom, you can see we turned that facility into a double-decker. And I need to tell you that to get that in, there is no mean feat. From the build-up, the prep, the planning, you can do a technical drawing and an overlay with regards to a marquee and a deck, but up until the point where you're actually on site. So 1, irrigation we need to take into account. 2 is the angulations. 3 is the access in the roads. 4 is the potential damage that can be done. Turning circles with regards to super links. Those are the practicalities that we have to deal with when we do this. So any change that we do would normally take at least 3 site visits, 4 walkabouts, 17 different sets of measurements, and eventually it's playing Tetris. We get to the point with regards to what we can progress it to. In 2018, you'll see on the left-hand side, we introduced another facility. That's another sponsor's facility, Stella. And if you look very carefully under that middle structure, at the bottom, it's the little openings. They almost look like white U's upside down. That is what we call a sponsor's deck. So underneath the grandstand, we created private seating for our sponsors. In that bottom picture, you can see it perfectly. It's like booths. And the viewing from there is second to none. You literally hear the golfer breathe as he's standing and he's putting onto the green. And in 2019, and this was last year, in essence, we've completed the wrap. So we have hospitality all the way around. We have a triple story with regards to our center facility. We've included VIP grandstands. We increased the size of the public. And that's quite a nice picky, those 2 at the bottom, just to give you an aerial overview of what we've managed to do in that space. Sponsors, interior and decor, and I'm going to flip through this quite quickly. I've made mention of the fact that we customize every single sponsor's facility. And what I need to emphasize here, and it may not sound like much in comparison to the bigger budget and the overall. So our event budget could vary subject to exchange and the given year, but anything from 160 million Rand and up. From a sponsor's perspective, they would collectively spend about 19 million Rand on their interiors.
It's 12 hours.
Will give you an idea of how that gets spent. So guys, I know we had 11 to 12 booked. I'm hoping you're going to bear with me for another 15 minutes or so. I'm going to flit through the pickies and then I'm going to get into the actual, the good, the bad, and the uglies. I've got 5 scenarios I'm going to run you through. But
John,
just to give you...
Definitely.
That's perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Okay, so if you have a look at the facilities, I've put in these pickies are of our 2 Nedbank facilities. So Nedbank is our title sponsor. Nedbank Pavilion is a facility that accommodates about 650 people. Nedbank on the 18th, which is one of those facilities in the double-decker, accommodates 350 odd people. So close on 1,000 VIPs just within their space. And we are talking top corporate South Africa. They've got their various divisions and obviously their invitees. Thank goodness I do not get involved in any of the guest management or the invitees. I always say to my sponsors, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Give me a grandstand or a tent any day. Give me a burst pipe or an issue I need to deal with operationally any day. But 1,000 egos every day in these facilities, no thank you. So I just want you to have a look generally, and I'll share this presentation with everyone afterwards, but just generally have a look at the detail, have a look at the differences in each facility, have a look at the attention to detail with regards to what goes into each one. And this is part of what we do. This is what we start with traditionally March or April of every year. And we literally sit and redesign their interiors. We start with budget, we start with layout, we start with spatial planning. We would have a look at the food and beverage concepts, operationally what we need to accommodate, and the rest we would then propose or adapt for them and to them subject to their budgets or their requirements. We've got varying facility sizes. The one top left is a facility, Beefeater Pink Gin. They have 50 odd guests a day. We call that a skybox. The one on top right was BMW. They were on the 17th. So you can see each sponsor has a look and a feel that they try to bring in. If you have a look at the bottom right, that is Rolex. So you can see their finish and how is this? They literally ship every single cushion, element, chair, table, picture that's up on the wall, even the lampshades, they send us from Geneva. It gets shipped across. Every item is in a flight case with the wearable that we need to confirm. They send a specification, and look, you can imagine the Swiss being the Swiss. They send a specification up front. They send us wallpaper. They send us leather trim, and they emulate, not exactly the same, but a certain look and feel per event that they have. So really top class. If we move on to the next one, we've got bigger facilities that are for hospitality packages. FedEx, again, you can see we did almost a herringbone dropped ceiling. So appreciate from an engineering perspective the amount of time that goes into per facility. There's not one facility at the Nedbank Golf Challenge that looks the same. And we have over 50 individual structures. Each one has their own look and feel. The next one, again, different sponsors, how we do it. They would obviously take their brand and how they want to execute. And why I tell you all of this is part of our financial process and control. So it's not only taking budgets that we have and executing it according to either what we pay for, the sponsor does, making sure that we quality management, quality QM with regards to the expectation, but we've got to control. So every single item, we have a scope of work from our infrastructure supplier that does the marquees, the carpeting, the furniture, the interior, the decor elements, lighting, etc., is that we've got a process in place where for 2 solid days before the event, we do a handover with them where every single item is controlled, verified, and accounted for at the beginning of the golf. That's over 50,000 individual items. At the end of the event, we do the same thing with audit teams on the Monday morning after the golf, starting at 6 o'clock, to obviously mitigate risk. Because what we say is, whilst the stock is ours, we are accountable. Once I've handed it back to you, you are. So we have 10 count teams Monday morning, 6 o'clock after the golf that would go and verify it is there. And at that point, it gets handed over to supplier. If the supplier keeps it on site for 2 weeks, their baby, their risk. But the processes like that we've obviously brought in to try and mitigate the risk as best possible. Highlights and innovations. So every year we've got to look at the feedback from the sponsors. We've got to look at what worked for us this tournament, what didn't. We've got to try and innovate. If we've had something in place for 2 or 3 or 4 years and it gets a little tired, we need to see whether we can give it a facelift or how we can re-engineer it. So the welcome walkways is the first point of call that any guest would go through. We would normally work on concept and render, and then we would execute. So it's quite nice just to see with regards to our concept and how it comes to life. I think what you may have seen from the aerial pickies is obviously the detail, the alignment, the amount of setup that goes into this event. I'm whether it's fortunate or not, OCD. So unfortunately, I've made people break marquees down if they're not properly aligned. So my teams work very well with regards to what the expectation is. And I think that attention to detail comes through in our look and feel. Again, a render, this was a facility that Nedbank asked for, that on the lower level of the structure, we did virtual reality interactive games. They had a lifestyle component they wanted to introduce, and how we bring it to life. So it's just with regards to our process and our approach to say, it's not same old, same old. We respect the budgets, we work within it, but we need to ensure that we keep our stakeholders happy. If we don't, we principally don't have the sponsorship, which means we couldn't execute the event to the standard we normally do. That just gives you an overview with regards to leading into the public village. I'd mentioned in the video that you saw about the yarn bombing. That was an incredible local project we did. I had 10 local ladies, but magogos, as in real magogos, out of a shanty town, an hour out of Sun City, who did not stop knitting for 4 months. They did the trees, they did these rings. It was incredible. We set up a little skill center for them. We donated all the wool back to them afterwards. It was absolutely incredible. So there's feel good that comes with the project as well. That's the public village. Just one point of reference I want to put in there is please have a look at the band stage that's built in over the pool. So that was the first time I did that last year. I need to tell you, I've still got a nervous twitch about it. And my therapist says I'm doing well. No, I'm being facetious, but that was no mean feat. I'm going to, in one of our scenarios, touch on why that was a bit of a toughie to execute. But principally, in a 40-year-old swimming pool that structurally is not sound, we had pink floating flamingos and a floating stage with 2 big screens left and right, for want of a better term. And I think important just to have a look at this and maybe reference the fact that if you look at the layouts, what is deceiving is the fact that you think Sun City is open and expansive, and it isn't. Please look carefully at this picture and look at the number of blooming palm trees that are there to try and fit in what we do into this space. It really is Tetris. It's unbelievable. You can plot and plan until you're blue in the face, but unless you're actually on site and you can measure to the point with angulations, access civils to service it, it's a tricky build. Okay, and then the 5 scenarios I wanted to touch on, and this just brings back our in theory and in practice. I haven't studied project management. For me, a project is there's a start, there's a finish, there's a lot of variables in between. You will be thrown curveballs and you need to deal with it. And the planning component, because I'm OCD, my absolute philosophy and ethos is check everything, assume nothing. And when things have gone wrong, there may have been one part in that process that was not checked or double checked or triple checked. And I'm going to bring through a couple of live scenarios what's really happened in practice. So true story. In theory, your title sponsor have selected and approved all their interior and decor elements for their VVIP facility. So I'd shown you the Nedbank pickies in that first slide. So how we would normally go about this, and specifically for Nedbank, because they're our title sponsor, is we would throw the big guns at them. We bring in our decor teams, we bring in our supplier, we would present, we would do 3D renders, we would do visuals, we would do a mock-up, we would have fabric samples, we would have furniture samples, we would have floral samples. We would literally go through a 2 to 3 month process to get to the point of the final product, which would include a 2D technical drawing with spatial planning. Every single element that you can look, touch, and feel in that facility, they would have approved the color, they would have approved the wood, they would have approved the fabric, to the point that if there's a cushion, that cushion printout would be signed off on the back. So it's not through lack of process or approval. That's in theory. They are happy with what they've selected. approved it, we have combined it, and we need to build and deliver, in theory. It would take us 2 weeks to build that facility. And what would happen on the Monday of the event is we do a walkthrough with the organizer from Nedbank. And in the past, it's been a matter of walkthrough, double check, love, sign off, thank you very much, we hand you over to operations. 2019, on the Monday of tournament, your title sponsor arrives, does a walkthrough for inspection and hates it. She literally stands there and says, I hate this. And it's every single item she has selected and approved. Not through our doing, not through non-delivery, not through what did we not deliver on that we were supposed to, or lack of process or control. It's there, delivered to the T. But the combination of everything together in that space, her opinion was that it did not do justice to what she was hoping for. And now we have a problem. We have a 2 million rand interior. It's Monday of tournament week. We've got the first 650 guests in there on Thursday, and she is not happy. So what do? Do we sit back and say, well, sorry, you've signed off on this, you've approved this, these are your choices, live with it? Or do we go back to the drawing board and say, fine, what can we do within the time we have, and how can we help you? And that's exactly what we did. We have teams in place who are fluid, who are there to assist, who we can activate. We literally, in a matter of overnight, did the following. We brought in a painting team. She selected a new Pantone on the paint for 40 odd running meters of drywalling. We brought in a painting team that needed to paint overnight. We exchanged about 30% of the furniture elements. We reselected new furniture and had that brought in overnight with regards to a truck from our supplier. We had to rebuild of the custom elements and move of the pergolas, which had taken us 3 days upfront to do, and we did that overnight. The decor elements that had been selected were removed and exchanged. We took within the pool of another area, so within our area, Sun International, we could exchange. It still spoke to our look and feel, so it didn't jeopardize or impact on that. We could change that for her. We redid some of the layouts and created conversation areas to break certain of the flow. And by Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, so within 24 hours, and we brought in a seamstress with a sewing machine to recover and reupholster of the custom furniture that had been done, because the color just didn't go with what had been selected. So within a matter of 24 hours, we in essence gave the facility a facelift, which I think gave many people gray hairs, and the rest of my team is also still trying to get over their nervous twitch and are in therapy. But yeah, the reality is, in theory, you can plan and practice. If your client walks in and they're not happy with what you've delivered, what's your fail-safe? What do you do about it? That's the biggest thing. True story number 2. In theory, your beverage sponsor advises they've purchased brand new fridges with the exact spec as per prior years for all the hospitality facilities. So this is the 164 odd coolers that they bring in to keep the beverage cold. Upright fridges, normally a crew of about 12 that bring them in. Our guidance with our teams, we obviously go with them for placement, positioning. So we would go and do the full distribution. We have 2D drawings and layouts, literally with the legend X marks the spot for the Coke fridge, Y marks the spot for the SAB fridge, how it goes with matrices, etc. And all they need to do once it's at that facility, we might have 3 in a row, is take it and place it into X marks the spot. Once they've done that, we would go back and we would obviously assess, verify, check, yes, everything's there and accounted for. Same thing, we take receipt, we sign for every single element that gets delivered. In practice, the fridges arrive, they're all positioned inside the various facilities. After the fact, once I got the phone call from my infrastructure supplier to say, Jeanne, have you seen there's damage to the vinyl flooring in almost all of the marquees? Initially, someone thought it was malicious and that it had been done intentionally. But when we went through and we had a look, the damage had been caused by the fridges, where the crew dragged the fridges along the vinyl floor, but it didn't have a rotating wheel. So a vinyl floor would basically, if you take your nails and you scratch it on plastic, so almost that rippled or torn effect, is exactly what our vinyl flooring looked like. The vinyl teams were no longer on site. The way we do it, and obviously the process and the bump-in would be infrastructure, big picture stuff, custom element flooring, furniture elements, and then we would bring in the softs and the decor. That had all been done, It was now a matter of final fridge, stock the fridge, and again, this is 10 days before the event. So what do? You bring back the vinyl teams, you re-engineer your flooring. Luckily, a lot of the flooring is patterned, so we didn't have to replace the whole floor. We wouldn't have had time or stock to do that. We could basically cut it out. We could replace certain elements. There was one sponsor out of 7 that noticed it. I don't believe in hiding things from our sponsors. I'd managed the expectation up front, and when we did walkabouts, I'd made mention of the fact that there had been certain damage. We fixed it. The quality was very good, but there was one sponsor that obviously noticed it. But yes, that's the reality of what you deal on, the knock-on effect of something like that with regards to, so nowadays, bump everything out to get that done, move the furniture, move the elements that are there, redo it, and it knocks on. We don't have accommodation because the accommodation is now being taken up by sponsors. We have to delay other processes with regards to build, so that would impact on our handover. Did it happen? Yes, it did. Did we fix it? Yes, we did. In theory, we've relocated the band stage into the swimming pool. The technical drawings have been submitted and approved by resort engineers. So we go through our due diligence, we do our preparation, we do our homework, we do what we need to, and Dion, that talks to your question with regards to compliance. We've got the tech drawings, we've got the engineer approval, we've got the elements, we have walked it, we had the engineers there, they inspected the pool. In practice, the day of the build, and this is the Monday prior to tournament week, 1 week to go, the group development consultant is inspecting the pool, reviews the sign-off from the resort engineers, and says we can't commence because all the pressure lines weren't factored in to the approval. So we get told, well, you can't build into the pool. And I quite simply say, well, that's not an option. We have to. So we need to get clever with regards to how we do this. So stock is on site, builders are there, process is SCAF was supposed to go out first, then the marquee, then the big screens and the elements, then the reticulation around it, then the covering, then the softs, then the branding, and then the dry run. And all of that was supposed to happen in 4 days and had been perfectly planned. We allow fat, we always do, for the event that something could go wrong, specifically if it's a new build. So we had 4 days up our sleeve. We had to re-engineer that entire structure. I had to reduce the size with almost 30%. We had to recess it. Heaven forbid, and I will plant a tree at every Arbor Day we have going forward. We had to cut 2 palm trees down. It was one of those we do now and apologize later. I engaged with resort management and told them that's what I'm doing. We had no choice. We had already done a 120,000 rand cable installation with regards to fiber. Where we were, the technology, the feed, we couldn't move the stage. So in principle, you have to roll with the punches. And we did it. So that's why I made reference to that picky of the band stage and the pool. You might see my nervous twitch coming back because I'm talking about it again. And then a beverage logistics has sent an escort with their Superlink truck carrying fridges for delivery. So the process is Superlink loaded with fridges, down into a boneyard, count verification, course map is given. It's even drawn on the map, the road you're supposed to take. You get to checkpoint 1, you get verified. Supply has their manager with it that escorts the truck around to the various points for drop-off, and that's where we get to the positioning in the marquees. In practice, manager, for whatever reason, didn't go with. Drivers alone, in his Superlink, with the fridges on the back, takes the wrong turn in the golf course, needs to turn around, sees this huge piece of grass, huge, beautiful, green, expansive lawn, and decides it's the perfect turning circle to get out, to go and find the manager to show him where to go, not knowing it's the first fairway. So the phone call I got was, Jeanne, are you sitting down? I think you need to come to the first now. And as I come around the corner on my scooter, I don't get a company car, I get a scooter. We do 20,000 steps a day with scooters. Here is a super link jackknifed over 2/3 of the fairway, trenching up the grass because he's trying to reverse to get off it. The fact that I'm sitting here to tell this story and that I didn't murder him and I'm not in jail is a wonder. But guys, no amount of planning can preempt that. No amount of planning with regards to your checks in place. You've checked it, you've balanced it, you've assumed nothing. The processes with regards to what had been put in place to mitigate the risk were there, and it went wrong. So it's not about dropping the ball. What do you do? What do you do about it once you've dropped it? So in this instance, needless to say, our agronomist, the chappie who does the greenkeeping in the grass, I swore like a trooper. I normally don't, but I did. Had a fit. And the very unfortunate thing in this instance is we didn't have enough time to recite. It wasn't last year. This was about 3 years ago. For those of you that follow the golf, you might have seen on the fairway, it was cordoned off and it was ground under repair. We had no choice. And the very sad thing about that is we couldn't move, and we tried to. We tried to think of how we could improve play. Is we couldn't move the first tee. That's fixed. There's no opportunity based on the configuration of the first. We had no choice but to GUR it, and that is most probably the worst thing you could do in any event, because they don't know that 3 weeks ago there was a truck in there with a Superlink with a driver that wasn't escorted, and it was 20 tons. As far as television, 540 million households and the golfers are concerned, is you don't have a quality course. So we fortunately didn't get much kickback on that, but realistically, in theory, it was planned for, and in practice, it went wrong. And then lastly, guys, sorry, and I know I've overrun, so just the last one is, in theory, the 2020 Nedbank Golf Challenge was supposed to be bigger, better, best, and this is supposed to be our 40th edition. And in practice, COVID hits, and even though our dates have now moved into December from November, we still run the risk of the event not happening this year. And the amount of planning, the amount of scenarios, the amount of detail we've gone into to get to the point of where we are now, trigger dates, minimizing risk, minimizing expenditure and financial exposure, supplier, sponsor commitments, and the time frame we have, you can plan until you're blue in the face. But the reality is that your planning is the safety net you have to ensure that when it comes to execution, you can do it, and you can do it well. But in practice, you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to align yourself to the situation you're in, and make sure whatever your mandate is, and make sure wherever you are, that you can roll with the punches. So, folks, that is it from my side. There's so much more I can tell you. I'd love to be able to go into more detail, but I've overrun. I really appreciate your time. I've spoken a lot, but guys, I'm a phone call away. I mean, if anyone ever just wants to soundboard anything, I had 2 tickets up for grabs, which I never mentioned. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to send it off to Dion, and we'll do a lucky draw for the attendees today. And for anyone that can ever get up to Sun City, I can't arrange accommodation because that's as scarce as white gold, but I will make sure that you are wined and dined and entertained, given a beer, given a ribbikie, given an ice cream. But if the event doesn't happen this year, the stands next year. So thank you for your time. I've had a great chat, seeing that it's been me, myself, and my screen, and I hope that you've enjoyed it too. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.